Take down that sign, Hask Bell ordered before the paint on Owen Vale's new ranch name had dried. 3 Triple M riders crowded the dead yard, with Clara Merritt trapped between them and the only road out. Sell by sundown, Hask said, or her father will make certain no water reaches this place again. Clara's face went white. Do not sell. My father buried the truth here 12 years ago, and if his men reach it first, they will bury the proof too. Owen Vale had spent 5 years' wages on Quail Hollow that morning. The porch leaned. The roof had holes. The well pump was rusted stiff. A tumble of gray boards lay where the barn had folded in on itself years ago. But the paper in Owen's vest said the abandoned place was his. Before sunset, he could lose his first piece of land, Clara could lose her freedom, and a millionaire could keep charging desperate families for water that was never his. Hask looked at Clara first, then at Owen's hand-painted board. Miss Clara, Hask said, your father wants you home. My father wants many things, she said. Hask's jaw moved once. He turned to Owen. This place is dry, broken, and worthless. Mr. Merritt will give you twice what you paid at the tax desk. Be grateful and ride away. Owen looked past him to Clara. She stood stiff beside her lathered horse, but her hands were not helpless. They were clenched on the reins like she was holding herself in place. If it is worthless, Owen said, why is the Triple M in my yard before dinner? Hask's eyes cooled, because poor men mistake papers for power. By sunset, no Merritt wagon will bring this place another barrel. You may keep the deed, Vale, but you will dry out on it. Owen lifted the hammer, not high enough to threaten, only enough to show he still held it. And rich men mistake hired hands for law. For a breath, the whole yard held still. Hask swung down and reached for the sign. Owen stepped between him and the porch rail. Clara said, Hask, don't. The old foreman flinched at her voice. It was the first sign Owen saw that this man had not always been her enemy. Hask let his hand fall. Then tell him yourself. Tell him what happens to men who build on water they do not have. Clara's mouth went pale. Owen looked at her. Did you ride here to warn me or to help him scare me? I rode here because my mother loved this place, Clara said, and because my father has lied about it for 12 years. That was when Owen understood the day had only just begun. He sent Hask and the riders away without the sign. They did not go far. Owen watched them stop on the ridge where the mesquite thinned. Hask stayed mounted there like a fence post with eyes. Everybody in that country knew Bartholomew Merritt. He owned the Triple M, the biggest spread between the dry flats and the black mesas. Men said Merritt water reached farther than law. Men also said his only daughter had silk gloves, piano hands, and no reason to cross a ruined place like Quail Hollow. Clara did not look like piano hands that morning. Her hat was gone. Dust streaked one cheek. Her horse was lathered white under the saddle, and there was fear under her pride that no rich parlor could polish away. Clara dismounted slowly. Her horse trembled. Owen took a step toward the bridle, then stopped and held out his hand instead of grabbing. May I? He asked. She looked surprised by the question. Then she gave him the reins. He led the horse to the shade of the dead barn and loosened the cinch. You can ride to town on my gelding if you want. Road is open. Clara studied him. You would let me leave. I do not know you well enough to keep you. That almost brought a smile. It vanished before it became one. Most men in my father's circle would call that foolish. Most men in your father's circle still have roofs. This time she did smile, small and tired, and Owen felt it in a place he had no business feeling anything yet. She was a rich man's daughter, and he was a cowhand with a broken porch. But there was mud on her hem and fear under her pride, and he had always trusted people more when hardship had rubbed the polish off them. He drew water from a barrel he had hauled from town and gave it to her horse first. Clara watched that too. You really mean to live here, she said. I mean to try. The pump is dead. Pumps can be mended. The barn is down. Boards can be raised. The spring is gone. Owen looked at her then. She turned away from the ridge where Hask waited. That is what my father says. He says my mother imagined it. Did she? Clara walked toward a low rise beyond the house. The earth there was pale, cracked, and crusted with salt. An old stone trough lay split at one end, half buried under tumbleweed. When I was little, she said, my mother brought me here in secret. There was water running in that trough. She told me Quail Hollow had been a stopping place before the big ranches, a spring for travelers, small herds, and women with children moving west. She knelt near the trough and brushed dirt from a flat white stone. A carved rose showed under her fingers, worn but clear. She carved these marks herself, Clara whispered. My father said I dreamed them. Owen crouched across from her. Why would he lie about a spring? Clara looked toward the Triple M range. Because every small rancher south of here pays him for water. The answer was simple enough to be ugly. Owen touched the dry trough. Then we find where it went. She asked. You know where to look, I own the shovel. For the first time since she had ridden in, Clara looked at him like he had become more than a stranger with a deed. They started at the old spring box before noon. Owen cleared brush. Clara held boards aside and pointed to places that fit her memory. She did not stand back like a woman afraid of dirt. She pulled splinters from rotted planks, dragged loose stone, and tied her torn sleeve at the elbow without complaint. By late afternoon, they had found a line of buried stones running from the rise toward the trough. Owen drove a crowbar under one and lifted. The dirt beneath was damp. Clara dropped to her knees. Owen heard it too. Not running water, not yet, but a low, secret sound under stone. Clara pressed her palm to the ground. It is there. There was wonder in her voice, and Owen felt something pull tight inside him. He had bought Quail Hollow because poor men sometimes needed to believe a dead thing could live again. Clara had ridden in carrying the same belief, but hers had her mother's face on it. Behind them, a rifle shot cracked the dry air. Owen caught Clara by the arm and pulled her behind the trough. The shot had not been aimed at them. It had struck the hand pump beside the house. Iron screamed. The pump handle snapped and hit the dirt. Two Merritt riders galloped through the yard. One leaned from the saddle and caught Clara's horse by the bridle. The animal reared, then was dragged toward the ridge. Clara rose, furious. That is my horse. Owen held her back as the riders vanished. Hask Bell remained on the ridge, watching. Clara looked straight at him. Hask lowered his eyes. He had obeyed the order, but he could not watch her understand what he had become. Your father just changed his price, Owen said. Clara stared at the broken pump, then at the hidden spring stones. He knows we found it. If you believe courage should outrun money, subscribe and stay to see what the buried spring proves. Her father was no longer only trying to buy the ranch back. He was trying to erase what their hands had touched before anyone else could see it. That night they did not go inside the ranch house. The place smelled of dust, mice, and old rain. Owen built a small fire in the yard where the chimney stones shielded the flame from the wind. Clara sat on the porch step with a tin plate of beans in both hands. He kept distance between them, not cold distance, careful distance. She noticed. You think I'm afraid of you? She asked. I think you have had enough men deciding what you feel. She looked down at the beans. My father says men like you want women like me for money. Your father has not met enough poor men with pride. He would say pride is what poor men own when they own nothing else. Owen glanced at the dark line of the ruined barn. I own a leaning porch, a broken pump, and one angry heiress who keeps telling me my ranch has water under it. She laughed softly before she could stop herself. It changed her face. Owen wished it had not, because wanting anything from Clara Merritt was dangerous. He wanted to keep the ranch. He wanted to see water in the trough. He wanted, more than was wise, to hear her laugh again when no one was hunting her. She set her plate down. My mother wanted this place opened again, not owned by Merritt money, not swallowed into the Triple M. She said a spring was a trust, not a throne. Why did she not make that known? Clara's fingers tightened together. She died before she could. Fever. I was 14. Afterward, my father boarded up this place and told everyone the spring failed. And Hask carried me on his saddle when I was little. He knew my mother, but he has eaten my father's bread for 30 years. Owen watched the old foreman's campfire prick the ridge. Clara's voice lowered. If I go back tonight, he will lock me inside and make me sign a statement that the spring never existed. Once my name is beneath that lie, he will call every other witness a thief. If I stay, he will cut me off. I have no house fit for a lady. I did not ask for one. You can sleep by the fire. I will take the far side of the porch with my hat over my face like a proper fool. She studied him for a long moment. Owen Vale, she said. If I were free to answer without my father standing behind every word, I think I would like this place. He looked at the flames instead of her. When you are free to leave, I would like to ask if you might stay. The quiet that followed was not empty. It was full of all the things neither of them could touch yet. At dawn, Clara was already at the spring box with the crowbar. Owen joined her, and together they lifted 3 stones before breakfast. The 4th would not move. Its edge was sealed under packed clay and rubble, as if someone had done more than neglect the channel. Owen dug until his hands blistered. Clara tore a strip from her petticoat and wrapped one palm without making him ask. Her fingers were careful. He felt the touch through the cloth long after she let go. By mid-morning, Hask Bell rode down alone. He stopped 10 yards away. He looked older than he had the day before. Miss Clara, he said, your father is coming. Then he can watch us work. Hask winced. Don't make this worse. Owen stood with the shovel. Who buried the channel? The old foreman's eyes went to the rose stone. Clara saw it, Hask. He swallowed. I had orders, he said. The words landed harder than a shout. Clara stepped back as if he had struck her. You told me I imagined the water. You were a child. I was her daughter. Hask looked at the ground. Your father said the country would tear itself apart if every broken homestead claimed water. He said the Triple M could manage it better. He meant sell it, Owen said. Hask said nothing. Clara's face steadied, but her eyes shone. Help us open it. I cannot. You can. If I cross him, I lose my bunk, my wages, every horse with my name in the tack book. Owen looked at him without pity. Then you know the price of truth. Most men only learn the price of silence. Hask's mouth tightened. He turned his horse. Clara called after him. When the water runs, Hask, you will either stand beside the lie or beside my mother's grave. The old man rode away bent in the saddle. Clara did not cry until he was gone. It was not a loud grief. She turned from Owen, pressed both fists against the old trough, and let 2 tears fall straight into the dust where water should have been. Owen gave her the privacy of looking at the broken pump instead. He taught me to sit a saddle, she said after a moment. My father bought horses. Hask taught me not to fear them. Owen picked up the bent pump handle. A man can teach one true thing and still fail another. Does that make forgiveness easier? No, Owen said, only clearer. She wiped her face with the heel of her hand and nodded once, as if she had accepted a bill she did not like but meant to pay. Then she took the shovel from him. Show me where to dig. He almost told her to rest. The words rose in him from habit, from worry, from the foolish desire to spare her. But her father's whole world had been built out of men telling Clara where she belonged. Owen swallowed the words and pointed to the seam where damp clay darkened the dust. There, he said, but the clay is mean. So am I today. They worked side by side through the white heat. Owen loosened stone. Clara scooped mud with a tin plate when the shovel blade would not fit. Once, when the old channel groaned under them, he caught her elbow and pulled her back before the edge collapsed. She caught her balance against his chest, close enough that both of them stopped breathing for one dangerous second. He released her the instant she found her footing. Clara saw that too. Her face softened in a way no rich parlor could have taught. Thank you, she said. For catching you. For letting go. They found the wooden plug after noon. It was wedged deep in the channel under flat stones, swollen with damp and tarred around the edges. Owen pried until the crowbar slipped and tore skin from his knuckles. Clara took the bar from him and worked it from the other side. "If we pull it now," Owen said, "the channel may wash out before witnesses see it. If we wait, my father will fill it again. Then we need witnesses before he does." "Hask said your father was already riding," Owen said. "Once his men reach this channel, the plug disappears. We have until their dust reaches the ridge." Clara looked west. "Then I will bring people before it does." Dust streaked her face, and the blue riding skirt was ruined beyond saving. She looked toward the small ranches west of Quail Hollow, where men had been buying Merritt water 1 barrel at a time. "They will be afraid. Likely. They owe him money. Likely. Then I will ask them anyway." Owen stepped in front of her. "Your horse is gone." "Then I walk. It is 6 miles. My mother's spring has waited 12 years. My feet can give it 1 afternoon." He wanted to tell her no. Instead, he saddled his gelding and gave her the reins. "Ride," he said. "I will keep the channel open." She looked down from the saddle. "If my father offers you enough money to leave before I return, I will tell him I am waiting on the woman who knows where the water is." Her smile was faint, but it held. "And if I do not return?" The question hurt more than Owen expected. "Then I will open it anyway," he said, "but I would rather not." She rode west. The waiting was worse than the digging. Owen kept the loose stones covered with brush so Merritt's men could not see how close the channel was to opening. He hauled the broken pump behind the house and found the bullet had split the casting, not just the handle. He looked at the sign a long time. Quail Hollow. The letters were uneven. He had painted them by lantern in the livery stable the night before, with a brush borrowed from a freight clerk who laughed at him for buying a place with no roof. Doubt said Clara would not come back. It said he had mistaken one hard day for something like hope. The next riders over the ridge would decide whether Quail Hollow lived or died. If Clara found no one brave enough to follow her, Owen would face Merritt with a broken pump, a hidden plug, and a sign held up by 2 stubborn nails. He set the sign straighter on its nails. "If she comes back," he told the empty yard, "you stand." Merritt came an hour later in a black coat that did not belong in that heat. He rode a tall bay horse with silver on the bridle. 4 men followed him, Hask among them. Bartholomew Merritt did not raise his voice. Men with enough money often did not have to. "Mr. Vale," he said, looking at the ruined ranch with disgust, "you have caused my daughter a great deal of embarrassment." Owen leaned on the shovel. "She seemed embarrassed by you." Merritt smiled thinly. "You think her courage is romance. It is rebellion. Rebellion passes when comfort is removed." "Is that why you took her horse?" "I took what was bought with my money." "She is not." The smile disappeared. Merritt drew a folded paper from his coat. $400. That is more than this ruin is worth 10 times over. Take it and leave before my patience runs dry. Refuse me, and no one who depends on M water will trade with you. You will own the deed and starve on it. Owen looked at the paper but did not reach for it. "I bought the ranch." "You bought a headache." "I have owned those before." "You are a cowhand playing landowner." "Maybe, but I am playing on my land." Merritt leaned in the saddle. "My daughter will not live in a roofless ruin with a man who owns 1 shirt and a shovel." Owen felt the insult, but he kept his voice level. "That will be Clara's choice when she is free to make it." "Her name sounds poor in your mouth." That was the first time Owen nearly lost his temper. He thought of Clara's hand wrapped around the crowbar. Clara walking toward fear with dust on her face. Clara laughing once by firelight like she had forgotten she was allowed. "No," Owen said, "it sounds free." Merritt turned to his men. "Fill the channel." 2 riders dismounted with shovels. Owen moved first. He stepped onto the channel stones and raised the crowbar. First man who buries this spring, he said, will have to step through me. Merritt's men hesitated. Hask stayed mounted, his face drawn tight. Merritt's voice cracked like a whip. Do it. The nearest rider took one step. Then Clara came back with 7 riders behind her. They were not grand men. One had a patched hat. One rode a mule. A woman in a brown bonnet drove a buckboard with 2 empty barrels, small ranchers, dry country people, people who owed Merritt too much to look him in the eye most days. Clara stopped beside Owen. Her cheeks were flushed from the ride. I found witnesses, she said. Merritt stared at her. You foolish girl. Clara swung down. I am 26 years old, father. If you must insult me, at least insult a woman. A murmur moved through the riders. Owen looked at her then, and pride struck him so sharply he had to look away before it showed too plain. Clara walked to the rose stone. My mother brought me here when water ran in this trough. Hask Bell knew it. My father knew it. And today we will know whether the spring died or whether someone murdered it. Merritt laughed. Springs fail, children misremember. Clara bent, took hold of the wooden plug and pulled. It did not move. Owen dropped beside her. Together they braced their feet in the clay. The plug shifted an inch. Mud bubbled around it. Hask, Clara said through clenched teeth, if you ever loved my mother, tell the truth now. Hask shut his eyes. Merritt said, Bell, you work for me. Hask opened his eyes and looked at the old trough. I buried it, he said. Behind Clara, someone whispered, 12 years. The brown-bonneted woman covered her mouth. The yard went silent. Merritt's head snapped toward him. Hask's voice shook, but it carried. 12 years ago, Mr. Merritt ordered the channel plugged and the spring house knocked down. Said no small place had a right to water without Triple M say-so. Merritt jerked his reins so hard that his bay horse stumbled sideways. Liar, Merritt said. Clara pulled again. Owen pulled with her. The plug tore loose. For one terrible second, nothing happened. Then water struck the air with a coughing rush. It came brown at first, full of old mud and leaf rot. Then it cleared. It ran through the stone channel, hit the broken trough, and spilled over the side in a shining sheet. The woman in the buckboard made a sound like a sob. One small rancher took off his hat. Merritt spurred forward, shut it. His riders moved toward the channel with ropes. Owen stepped between them and Clara, but Clara did not hide behind him. She stood on the wet stones with the plug in her hand. Any man who ropes this spring, she said, ropes my mother's name with it. Merritt pointed at Hask, put her on a horse. Hask looked at Clara. Then he swung down, unbuckled his Merritt gun belt, and dropped it in the mud. No, he said. The word was not loud, but it broke something. One of Merritt's riders lowered his rope, then another. The third looked at the water, then at the small ranchers watching him, and let his rope fall too. Merritt's face darkened. I own your wages. Hask nodded. You did. The brown-bonneted woman climbed down from the buckboard and held up a folded lease. Mr. Merritt, mine comes due Monday. I will not renew. She tore the renewal in half and dropped both pieces beside Hask's gun belt. Nor mine, said the man on the mule. One after another the small ranchers spoke, not with speeches, just plain words. No, not mine, we have seen enough. Merritt reached for Clara. Owen caught his wrist before he touched her. For a heartbeat, the two men stood close, rich cattle king and humble cowboy, with spring water running around their boots. Owen said, You lost the ranch when you buried its heart. Do not lose your daughter by trying to bury hers too. Merritt jerked free. She will come home when she remembers what comfort costs. Clara's eyes filled, but she did not bend. I know what it costs. It cost my mother her promise. It cost Hask his honor. It cost these people 12 years of water. I will not pay one more day. Merritt looked at the riders, but none moved. He looked at Hask, but Hask stared at the mud. He looked at the small ranchers, and for the first time in years, they did not look away. Merritt barked, Mount up. Only 2 riders obeyed. The others remained beside the running trough, boots planted deep in the mud. One of the men who stayed bent and filled his hat from the spring before Merritt could curse him back into the saddle. He mounted without another word. "You are no daughter of mine while you stand here," he said. Clara went pale. Owen reached for her hand, then stopped short, giving her the choice even now. She took his hand herself. "Then I will stand where my mother's water runs," she said. Merritt rode out with only 2 men behind him. The others stayed to drink from the trough. Hask did not ask forgiveness. He picked up a shovel and began clearing the collapsed spring wall. By sunset, his palms were bleeding, and Clara let him keep working. That was mercy enough for that day. The small ranchers filled their barrels, but nobody treated Quail Hollow like a public prize for grabbing. Clara wrote names in Owen's worn tally book, not as debts, but as turns. Owen watched her set rules fairer than any Merritt lease had ever been. When the last wagon left, the yard was quiet except for running water. Clara stood by the trough, looking smaller now that the fight had passed. Owen came beside her. "I am sorry," he said. "For what?" "For what it cost." She looked toward the road her father had taken. "He offered comfort like a locked room. I think I mistook that for home because it had curtains." Owen did not rush to answer. The sky over the mesa was turning copper. At last he said, "Quail Hollow has no curtains. No roof worth naming either." "True. And a pump with a bullet hole." "Also true." She turned to him, "But it has water." "It does. And a man who asked before taking my reins." Owen's throat tightened. Clara took a small bundle from her saddlebag. Inside was a white rose cutting wrapped in damp cloth. It was bruised from the hard ride, but alive. "My mother kept one at the Triple M," she said. "I cut this before I left." Together they planted it beside the spring rail. Owen pressed soil around the roots. Clara poured the first dipper of spring water over it. Then she picked up Owen's paintbrush and added words beneath his Quail Hollow sign. "Spring open by turn." She hesitated, then painted 2 names smaller below it. Owen Vale and Clara Merritt. Owen read the names until they blurred a little. "Clara," he said, "now that you have a road open, water running, and no man holding your answer, I would like to court you properly." She looked at the sign, then at the poor roof, the broken pump, the wet trough, and the white rose leaning bravely in new dirt. "Properly may take work here," she said. "I know." She looked at the boards, the broken pump, and the road her father had taken. Then she stepped closer and put her hand in his. "Then ask me again tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. I think I will enjoy saying yes while we build." Owen smiled then, slow and helpless. That evening, Clara lit a lantern in the roofless house, while Owen set 2 boards across the broken porch. They did not pretend the work was done. At sunset, Clara hung the wet brush beneath the sign that carried both their names. Below it, spring water ran clear through the trough, while the white rose stood upright in the soil she had chosen. Quail Hollow had begun the day under Merritt's buried lie. It ended with Clara lighting its roofless house under her own name. Subscribe for more clean, romantic Wild West stories where humble cowboys, brave frontier women, and lonely ranches find their way home.